The first time Alex saw Natasha, he was 12, and she was a whirlwind of scarlet silk and laughter marrying his Uncle Mark in the backyard. To Alex, she wasn't just beautiful. She was a creature from a more vibrant adult world, all smoky eyes and a throaty laugh that made his stomach clench. He spent the next 5 years in a private, silent agony of adoration, cataloging her, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the scent of her perfume, jasmine and nicotine, that lingered in a room after she'd left, the careless drape of her silk robes on Sunday mornings at their family lake house. By 17, Alex was a bundle of raw nerves and unspent desire. The crush had not faded. It had fossilized, becoming a core part of his geography. He was adept at hiding it, at being the quiet, polite nephew, all while his mind constructed elaborate, impossible fantasies. The change happened on his 17th birthday. There was no lightning strike, no cosmic event. He simply woke up with a new pressure behind his eyes, a hum in his blood. The first test was accidental. Sarah Jenkins, the popular, unattainable senior, had laughed at his answer in history class. Frustrated and humiliated, he'd looked at her and, without thinking, pushed that internal pressure towards her. He imagined her wanting him. Her laughter died. Her eyes, previously bright with mockery, glazed over slightly. She blinked, shook her head, and then looked at him again, a slow, confused smile spreading across her face. "You know, Alex, that's actually a really interesting point," she'd said, her voice soft. She'd twirled her hair, her gaze lingering on his mouth. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating, he practiced. It was a muscle, this new power. He learned to focus it, to project a wave of pure, irresistible allure. He could make a girl at a coffee shop forget her order, her boyfriend, her name, her eyes locked only on him. He learned he could dial it up, a gentle nudge of attraction, or a full-force tsunami of raw, carnal need that could make a woman whimper in public. He became a god, and every woman was his potential worshiper. But there was only one temple he truly wanted to desecrate. The opportunity came in July. Uncle Mark was away on a week-long business trip, and Alex's parents, thinking they were doing a good deed, sent him to stay with Natasha at the lake house under the guise of helping with the heavy chores. The house was quiet, suspended in summer heat. Natasha moved through it like a ghost in cut-off denim shorts and one of Mark's old t-shirts, the fabric thin enough to hint at the shape of her. She was different without Mark, quieter, more pensive. The vibrant socialite was muted. On the third evening, Alex found her on the back porch, a glass of white wine in her hand, watching the sunset bleed into the lake. The air was thick with the scent of pine and water. "You're quiet, Malenki," she said, using the Russian endearment she'd called him since he was a boy. "Little one." "Just thinking," he said, leaning against the door frame. He let the power simmer, a low-grade thrum, not aiming it yet, just letting it bleed into the space around him. She shivered, though the air was warm. "It's a night for it." She took a long sip of her wine. "Sometimes this house is too quiet. It makes you hear things you don't want to hear." "Like what?" "Your own thoughts," she said, her voice barely a whisper. This was his moment. He focused, pushing the power out, not as a blunt instrument, but as a subtle, intoxicating fog. He imagined her looking at him and not seeing her nephew, but a man. A dangerous, desirable man. Natasha stiffened. She put her glass down on the railing with a sharp click. She turned her head, her dark eyes wide, searching his face. "Alex." His name was a question, a warning. "You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen," he said, the words simple, true, and laden with the full force of his ability. He saw the resistance in her eyes, the moral architecture of her life, wife, aunt, adult, fighting against the unnatural tide he was summoning. Her knuckles were white where she gripped the railing. She shook her head, a tiny, frantic motion. "We can't. This isn't. Don't say things like that." He took a step forward, the hum in his blood intensifying. He dialed it up, focusing on the physical, the primal. He imagined the feel of his hands on her skin, his mouth on hers, the weight of him pressing her down. He projected the heat, the sweat, the forbidden thrill of it. A soft, helpless sound escaped her throat, a mix of a gasp and a moan. The fight drained from her posture. Her body went slack, then tense with a new, different kind of tension. Her pupils dilated, swallowing the hazel of her irises. Her lips parted. "Alex," she breathed again, but this time it was a surrender. He closed the distance between them. He was taller than her now. He cupped her face, his thumb stroking her cheekbone. Her skin was fever-hot. She leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed. "This is wrong," she whispered, but her hands came up to clutch at his wrists. Holding him there. "I don't care," he said. And he bent his head and kissed her. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a claiming. The moment their lips met, the last of her restraint shattered. She kissed him back with a desperate, hungry fervor, her hands tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. Her tongue met his, and the taste of her, wine and mint and something uniquely Natasha, unraveled him. He backed her against the wooden wall of the house, his body pinning hers. He could feel the frantic beat of her heart against his chest. "Inside," she panted against his mouth, her voice ragged. "Now!" They stumbled through the screen door, a tangle of grasping hands and frantic kisses. A lamp was knocked over, but neither of them noticed. In the dim living room, lit only by the dying sunset, they fell onto the large, worn sofa. Alex's hands were under her t-shirt, pushing it up. She broke the kiss long enough to pull it over her head and toss it aside. She wasn't wearing a bra. Her breasts were full, pale in the twilight, her nipples dark and already hard. He groaned, lowering his head to take one in his mouth. She cried out, her back arching off the cushions, her fingers digging into his scalp. "Bože moi." "Alex!" she moaned, her native language a sign of how far gone she was. He lavished attention on her breasts, licking, sucking, biting gently while his hands roamed down her sides, over the curve of her hips to the waistband of her shorts. He popped the button, dragged the zipper down. He could feel the heat radiating from her core. "Please," she begged, her hips bucking against his hand. "Please don't stop." He yanked the shorts and her plain cotton panties down her legs in one rough motion. She was completely bare to him now, sprawled on the couch where she'd once read him bedtime stories. The sight of her, naked and wanton, her thighs falling open in invitation, was the most potent aphrodisiac he could imagine. He stood up for a moment, frantically pulling off his own clothes. Her eyes devoured him, dark with a lust that was both his creation and, he liked to think, a twisted version of her own. When he was naked, his erection jutting out, hard and eager, she reached for him. "Come here," she commanded, her voice husky. He knelt on the floor at the edge of the couch, pulling her hips to the edge. He buried his face between her legs. She was wet, slick with desire, and her taste was even more intoxicating than he'd dreamed. She screamed, a raw, unfiltered sound as his tongue found her clit. Her hands fisted in his hair, not guiding, just holding on as he feasted on her. He used his power, focusing it on the bundle of nerves under his tongue, amplifying every sensation 1,000-fold. Her climax was swift and violent. She thrashed beneath him, her cries turning into broken, sobbing pleas as she came, her body convulsing. He didn't let up, licking and sucking through her orgasm until she was pushing his head away, oversensitive and trembling. Before she could recover, he was on her, covering her body with his. He positioned himself at her entrance. Her eyes, dazed and full of a strange, wrecked awe, met his. "Look at me," he commanded, the power in his voice a physical force. She did. He pushed inside her. She was tight, impossibly so, and so wet. Her gasp was sharp, her nails scoring his back. He stilled, letting her adjust, watching the play of emotions on her face. Shock, pleasure, guilt, and a overwhelming, all-consuming need. "Move," she whispered, her legs wrapping around his waist, locking him to her. "Alex, please, move." He began to thrust, slowly at first, then with increasing pace and force. The couch creaked a frantic rhythm beneath them. Her moans were constant now, a low, desperate soundtrack to their sin. He fucked her with a single-minded intensity, every thrust a declaration of his years of longing. A conquest, a perversion of the family bonds that had once defined them. He could feel his own climax building, a tight coil in his gut. He leaned down, capturing her mouth in a sloppy, breathless kiss. "Come for me again, Natasha." He growled against her lips, pushing the command into her with his power. Her eyes rolled back. A second, more powerful orgasm ripped through her, her inner muscles clamping down on him like a vice, milking him. The sensation was too much. With a guttural cry, he spilled himself deep inside her. His own release a blinding white explosion that left him boneless and panting on top of her. For a long time, the only sounds were their ragged breaths and the chirping of crickets outside. The spell was broken. The hum in his blood receded. Slowly, he pulled out and collapsed beside her on the narrow couch. She immediately turned away from him, curling into a fetal position. He saw the shiver run through her, heard the choked, muffled sob. "Natasha?" he said, his voice soft, young again. "Go to your room, Alex," she said, her voice thick with tears. Just go, he did. He lay in his childhood bed, the scent of her jasmine and sex clinging to his skin, and he felt not guilt, but a fierce, possessive triumph. He had her. He had cracked the beautiful, untouchable porcelain doll and found a woman of fire and need inside. The next 2 days were a tense, silent dance. Natasha avoided him, her face a mask of shame and confusion. She flinched when he entered a room. Alex bided his time. He didn't use his power overtly, just let it linger around him like a scent, a constant, low-level reminder of what had happened on the couch. The breaking point came on the last night. A summer storm rolled in, lashing the house with rain and wind. They were trapped together in the electric-lit intimacy of the living room. Natasha was trying to read, but her hands were shaking. Alex finally spoke. "You can't pretend it didn't happen." She looked up, her eyes haunted. "It was a mistake. A terrible, terrible mistake. I'm your aunt. You're not my blood," he said, standing up. He let the power build, a storm inside him to match the one outside. "And you wanted it." "You wanted me." "No," she whispered. "But it was weak. A protest for form's sake." "Yes," he said, walking towards her. He focused everything on her, not just lust this time, but a sense of inevitability, of rightness. He projected the image of them together, not as a sordid secret, but as lovers, entwined and passionate. "You've been lonely. You've been waiting. For me." Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't look away. The book slid from her lap to the floor. The fight was gone. His will was supplanting her own. "Come here," he said. Like a sleepwalker, she rose and went to him. He didn't kiss her. He simply took her hand and led her up the stairs, to the master bedroom she shared with his uncle. The room smelled of Mark's cologne and her perfume. The large marital bed was neatly made. "On the bed," Alex commanded. She lay down, her body trembling. He undressed her slowly, ritualistically, peeling away the layers of cotton and denim until she was naked. He undressed himself, his eyes never leaving hers. The storm outside provided a dramatic backdrop, lightning flashing, illuminating their bodies in stark, blue-white bursts. This time was different. It was slower, more deliberate, a deeper corruption. He worshipped her body with his hands and mouth, learning every curve, every sensitive spot. He made her come with his fingers, with his tongue, until she was begging, not for him to stop, but for more. Her cries lost in the rumble of thunder. When he finally entered her, it was with a possessive slowness that made her whimper. He made love to her in Uncle Mark's bed, staring down at her face, watching the conflict finally dissolve into pure, unadulterated ecstasy. He owned her, completely. "Who do you belong to?" he asked, his voice a low thrum of power as he moved inside her. "You," she moaned, her eyes glazed, her mind empty of everything but him. "Alex, I belong to you." He smiled, a cold, satisfied smile. He drove into her again and again, claiming her, marking the territory that had once been his uncle's. When they climaxed together, it was a silent, shattering event, their cries swallowed by a peal of thunder that shook the very foundations of the house. In the morning, the storm had passed. The world was washed clean and new. Mark was coming home that afternoon. Alex packed his bag. He found Natasha in the kitchen, making coffee. She was wearing one of her silk robes. She turned as he entered, and her face was calm, serene. There was no shame, no guilt. There was only a soft, dazed devotion. The power had done its work, rewriting her reality. She walked over to him, stood on her toes, and kissed him. A soft, lingering kiss. "When will I see you?" she asked, her voice a whisper. "Soon," he said, stroking her hair. "I'll find a way." She nodded, trusting, pliant. "I'll be waiting, Malenki." He left the lake house, the screen door slamming shut behind him with a sound of finality. The summer sun was warm on his skin. He felt the hum of his power, a dormant beast inside him, satisfied for now. He had gotten what he wanted. He had turned his childhood fantasy into a dirty, secret reality. He was no longer the boy with a crush. He was the man who had stolen his uncle's wife. And as he walked towards the car, he knew this was only the beginning. The world was now a garden of women, and every single one was a flower waiting to be picked.